Some interesting reforms have recently been taking place, especially in a sector that some have described as the lifeblood of any economy, the lubricant that ensures the wheels that moves the commerce, that moves the trade, that moves the business in any given economy, such as Zambia. And of course, on the People Space podcast today, we will be focusing on the energy sector. And there's been a lot that has been happening in that particular sector, massive investment announcements. We've heard President Hakainde Hichilema boast, even, reveal to the encouragement of many that the energy sector is poised to be among those that will be a transformative agent when it comes to changing the fortunes of Zambia's economy. And today we will be zeroing in on some of those major reforms, trying to understand how, if at all they will, and if they can, change the fortunes of Zambia's economy. The name as usual is Wenzel Mavoro, and you are welcome to the People's Space podcast. And my guest today is none other than a prominent voice in the energy sector, and this is no other than Dr. Kafula Mubanga. He is the president of the Oil Marketing Companies Association of Zambia. I know that he's a man that obviously you've heard so many times on radio, TV, commenting and speaking on the energy sector. So, Doc, it's always a pleasure to have people like yourself on the People's Space podcast.
Well, once again, thank you. It's my rare honor to be hosted here, and I'm hoping we're gonna have a great time together.
Yeah. Of course, a great time is always what we want to have here. But before we get right into the conversation, I'd like to remind you, and from the onset mention, that you can be a lucky winner of exciting prizes such as the hoodie that I'm wearing and other valuable memorabilia ranging from t-shirts, mug cups, and other amazing accessories. All you simply have to do is make sure you get interactive on the platforms where the People Space podcast is. That is YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok under the handle the Center for Trade Policy and Development on YouTube and Facebook, and CTPD Zambia on Twitter and TikTok. If your comment garners enough traction and reactions, you might just be that lucky winner that will be donning a fantastic warm hoodie such as this one. Now, Doc, let's get into our conversation. Obviously, we have a tradition when we come here. One of the things that we would like our guests to know, I mean, you are a prominent individual, and your voice has been very resounding, in the energy sector. And a lot of people know when it comes to petroleum, they know there's that man that always talks about petrol and fuel issues. And they just know you as such.
Yeah.
So as we start, we would like to know, who is Dr. Kafula Mubanga beyond the man that we know in the energy sector?
Absolutely. Firstly, it's a very interesting platform for me to start with. I would talk about, you're right, a lot of times when I get a call and I'm told, you have to say something, it's always in the petroleum space. And I must like that, and people know me from that perspective. But thank you for the honor of trying to know who I really am, or what makes Kafula Mubanga. All right. So basically, did my early primary school and I was at Choma Secondary School, so I can speak a bit of Tonga,
okay.
Moributi, meaning how are you and stuff like that. So I did my grade 12 off there, and then I went to Zikas, did my first degree in IMIS or EMIS that time, finished that program, and I went ahead. I did my master's degree in political science, and I did my PhD in political science. So basically, I'm a political scientist background person. I appreciate politics, and just about that in terms of what I have done in the political space. I used to be the first Secretary General for Cosmo Mumba, and then I did save, his older brother, former Vice President, Lumumba as his media director, MMD at that point. I did also save Felix Mtati as media director. That was my last portfolio, serving in a political space. So I've had that experience. I did save the late Dr. Edgar Chagolungu as his presidential media director for Coverbelt. So I ran the Coverbelt during his campaign process, and because of my background in the political space. So that makes a little bit of me. And of course, married. I've got 4 beautiful kids, and one of it is she just looks like me. And she's just brilliant, and I'm ready to fight the guys when they come.
That's an interesting one. No, the warning and the caution has been sent.
Definitely. Don't try that at home. I'm ready for that kind of thing. So basically, that's a bit about me away from the petroleum space. But adding to the petroleum space, I did my master's in petroleum studies. Basically, that covers a lot more in specific terms, petroleums and petroleum products and things like that. Very far from what you qualify now as energy experts. Energy experts, they just touch a bit of that, but we dive into the intricacies of the petroleum space in terms of commerce, how it works, trade-offs and things like that, contracts, and we understand the intricacies of that space. So basically that's about Dr. Kafula Mubanga, if I mention.
I like the fact that, you delve into the intricacies of the petroleum sector itself. And I'd like to start off with one of the major ones in our setup. This one was so, I think, contagious in that even the president had to make a statement instructing the peers to say, can we look at this issue? I need a report on my desk. This is the issue of the monthly review prices of petroleum, of fuel pump prices in this country. Would like to find out from you. First of all, what are your thoughts on the monthly review fuel prices? Is it something that we should continue with? What challenges and opportunities are there for oil marketing companies?
Absolutely. So first of all, we are presented with an opportunity where we're coming from a background where we used to have, a quarterly review process. And this quarterly review process, it was okay for scholars. That's very good for us to expedite or explore opportunities that lie with that. But let's dive into that a little bit. Before we talk about the quarterly review process, we had Indeni. Indeni was functioning at full capacity. Indeni was producing over 9 products: petrol, diesel, HA4, paraffin, and all these things that actually some of those products were able to export, and it gave us Forex. So government was able to manage its inflows and outflows properly, because out of the crude that ran through that pipeline, we had over 9 products. And that attracted a lot of activities within the petroleum space. So those that were dealing with paraffin, we could be able to export into Malawi, HA4 into Botswana, and so on and so forth. Botswana at some point could make a very comparative decision between SA and us. They could import diesel and petrol from here out of Indeni. So Indeni was a buffer for Forex investment. So it was very easy for us to kind of settle, the Forex issues, because we attracted Forex on the other side. But quickly and fast forward, we get into a regime, maybe before we get there. So as a result of that dynamic process, remember, Indeni was not functioning at its full capacity. At full capacity, it will not accrue debt, because government only funded it to almost 60%. And 40% became a liability because it was not at fully funded. And because of that, it incurred a lot of debt. So when you have a new regime, it looks at the debt structure, saying, look, we can't manage to continue with debt creation. We need to mitigate this. So let's convert this pipeline, reduce the debt, and be able to work on a finished product. A very brilliant idea, because at that time it was critical for government, for the new dispensation of government, to look at this intricate. Do we continue on a trajectory of creating debt, or do we look for funders to fund Indeni? And then how sure are we that it's going to be profitable at this particular point? And they had no time. They thought to themselves, we have made a promise to the people. We're going to reduce the cost of palm prices. So what's the strategy? Let's convert this quickly. The conversion of a pipeline. Exactly where we are. And then when you convert a pipeline, it becomes very interesting, because you are, first of all, not an oil producing country. If you're not an oil producing country, you do not determine the perimeters around your cost measures. So what you do is you depend on external market prices, external markets, to determine the market prices for crude or for petroleum products or finished product. So with that in mind, you have to understand what are then the intricacies with that. It means that all your prices are reviewed on monthly basis, because that's when the plots are reviewed, or that's when analyzed or given out. The prices are every month. So that particular model is what you adopt. It's not something new. It is a deviation from crude into finished products. Now, finished products are reviewed on monthly basis. When you go to Tanzania, it's a monthly basis. You go to South Africa, it's monthly basis. So that's how we arrived at a monthly review model pricing. So to get back to us to see whether this monthly review is giving us any sort of benefit. Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that, number one, we don't determine the monthly plot prices for products on international markets. They are reviewed on monthly reviews, right? Monthly model. So we had to adopt that. So whether or not at that point it makes significance in terms of reducing your cost of palm prices or not, you have to try that out. So, and then other than that, you have now your exchange rate. Now, when you are looking at ERB, the ERB looks at two important factors that determine your palm prices. On the other hand, is the international prices. How are the markets behaving? What are the prices? What is the trend of prices on the market? They take probably the average in the finishing and the first week, and then you get the average and be able to determine this is a trend. It's not going up or down, or it's at some point settles. So you look at that average, then you take that as your market price for petroleums, and then you go back on the other side. What is your exchange rate? Are you having exchange losses? Do you have currencies? Kwacha, how is it performing against international prices? When you look at these two, now they begin to detect what the prices should be.
So now, the concern obviously has always been the impact that it has on businesses. Coming from an era where it would take you 3 months, easy for planning, easy for, putting those. It's planning basically. So, is it possible, for example, if we built, I know government right now is building a few reserves, which will be finishing. If we built those reserves and we had enough, say, to buy fuel that can last us for 3 months, can we then revert to the 3 months review period? Can that work?
Definitely. Oh, having said what I've said, it does not substitute the fact that we can still find fundamentally solutions to our encumbrances as a country. Firstly, is that we must. We're still on the pipeline. We are still in the open access policies. It's a policy framework that we need to work around with. First of all, you are going to have a tender. When you have a tender, these volumes that we're talking about are huge volumes. So in the market space, you've got what you call as spot markets. You've got what you call as bulky purchase. Now, with the bulk, you're going to deal directly with the refineries. So with that volume, you're able to go to a refinery and lock up a price. But what you need to do is to reduce the number of participants on the pipeline. Why am I saying that? You're looking at an accumulative volume 200 million. Okay, fine. So if we order 600 million, we're going to lock up a better price. You remember our business is volume based. So if I'm going to lock up a price at 600 million volume, I'm going to get a fair deal, which then I can bring the effect of that undertaking to the perimeters of my market and go to government. Guys, I've locked up 6 months. I'm going to give you a flat price for the next 3 months. So it's attainable. It's how you structure your open access policy. All these things require policy frameworks. Where we are is that our open access policy is slightly weak. We have achieved a lot using the
How
open
is it
access.
weak, Doc? Isn't it just this year when we heard the approval of the Tazama open access? So maybe just let us in. What exactly is that policy? I know a lot of people hearing you say open access, open access. So that policy was approved significantly this year. Another milestone, by the way, in the energy sector. What is that policy? And maybe describe some weaknesses for us.
Okay, so first of all, government has scored a number of things around that space. Number one is multi-participation in the pipeline. So now you have people participating from all sectors. I do remember one time IMF had passed a comment that they pushed an agenda to actualize the open access policy because in itself is engraved participation of OMCs. So we have had that come to fruition. But the extent of its weakness is that it does not look at the perimeters that I'm talking about. For instance, you have 6 people participating. Currently, we have Indeni, who has failed to supply adequately the national grid. It's a good attempt by government to bring Indeni because Indeni is a state-owned entity. So it is a good idea, but it can only be good to the extent that you fund it adequately. It must attain international credency for it to operate. People should know that even if you give Indeni this product, they're going to pay back. Okay? So it has to work around that space for some time. Yes, it has a trade record, but its trade record has been very defective. They have defaulted. There's the debt we're talking about. So it has failed. Next month, they're going to be having Indeni and BOT. The idea that government is building there is to build capacity within Indeni. Very fantastic. But the point is that Indeni has a lot to put into place. Okay? And that becomes weak. Indeni must be able to say, for the next 6 months, Indeni has locked on this deal. Okay? It's locked on this deal at this price. This is a flat price because they're taking 600 million. All right? So for the next 6 months, we intend to see Indeni performing and supplying. All right? Maybe with one other OMC. All right? So that locked up price now passes as a benefit to the Zambian consumers. Because as it stands, whether Indeni supplies, whether Kafula Mubanga and company supplies, the benefit is very minimal. But when you have a very straight stretch, ERB will not sit to review these prices every time because there's a locked up price. Someone should go to them and say, I've locked the price. Lock the price to 22 kwacha because the next 3 months we have a locked up price with the refinery and we're going to push this product into the country. This is how you're going to attain a flat price for the next 3 months. And so I was saying it's attainable. It's a framework that you need to put into place. But right now, every other 2 months you have a new person bidding. Words from the minister himself, the current minister of energy, sends a very, very threatening, a worrisome message. He says we need to reconsider, or they need to look around the open access policy up to December. What is the implication? If the implication, and stand to be corrected, means that hold on to the open access policy for the next 6 months, it then imposes a threat to the possible investors. Because remember, we are not government driven in terms of investment. This is private sector driven investment, which this government has absolutely scored. Why? It has no date backlogs. So we don't go back and say we owe whosoever. Whatever you see is at its face value. If we say it's 22 kwacha, it's 22 kwacha without government having, a date carrying on its back. It's an interesting, it's a piece of achievement that other countries are trying to emulate. Angola today, they're striking because they're trying to go the Zambian way. So this government has called. As to whether we need to continue, tightening up our processes on open access is definitely a subject of discussion. But in terms of the scores, this government has definitely scored. Of course, there was, I think, one of the articles I read where government wants to revamp Indeni, full-fledged because they have found an equitable partner to, reinvest into Indeni. My view is that, yes, run with it, but let it be 50-50. You run on your, crude oil. You run also on your finished product to make sure that you secure national security in terms of supply of product. So basically, either way, this is the direction that we probably need to take.
Talking about security of supply, when you discuss the issue of open access and Indeni now carrying finished product, the issue of security comes in. I would like to get your thoughts on that. What is the cost of that transition, especially on government? Who pays for the security? Is it the OMCs that will be transporting their product, or is it government? And if so, when you look at the cost, really, is it really okay? Or?
Okay, perfect. So what happens when I allude to security of product is a scenario where government has secured product for the next 14 days. There's no possible interruption, or 10 days. So OMCs bear that cost. When I mean security, in this sense, would mean there is no erratic supplies in the country. So the country is secure with that. So the mandate is really not on the government side to supply, because remember, government is not participating anymore. So you have the OMCs. But government has a mandate to ensuring that you as OMCs comply to your license conditions, you supply into the country. So the real burden really is on the OMC side. So it's actually the OMCs that secure that. Now, all that is factored in our cost, in our cost model for ERB, So all that is captured. The margins for the OMCs, they're not paying more than they should. The role of government is to ensure that you and me are not extorted by the investment that we bring in as OMCs. This is why you're going to have ERB. Is the major obligation is to make sure that the public is not extorted. The prices are not off the pitch. Government wants to make sure that they understand your cost, you make your profit, they create an enabling environment for OMCs to thrive. And I can attest to you that this government has made several efforts to doing that. And at where we're standing...
Have they, though?
No, I can attest to you. Look at this. The last 6 months.
My argument, Doc, is from a lay perspective.
Absolutely.
My argument is from a lay perspective because, look, I've bought fuel at 31, 32, so...
I understand. So,
why are we not seeing the reduction of fuel prices? Like what's happening?
How much are you buying fuel now? How much are you buying diesel now? 22? Somewhere about there.
Yeah, 22,
from
23,
30
23,
and so on. Now, for you to arrive at a mechanism that works, first of all, remember, we've just digressed to actualizing the open access policy. All right? So when you actualize that, it's like a try and error, right? We've never used that before. Those people, the OMCs that you want to bring in product, they have never moved a vessel. It's a first experience. They don't even understand how to go and secure a berthing slot in Tanzania. So you have to coach them through that process to a point where they mature and they're able to move vessels. So government has to trade very carefully. If they say, Kafula Mubanga, go and bring a vessel today, do I even know where to start from? I don't know. The very fact that you've got a license does not guarantee that you understand the industry. Does not mean that you understand the intricacy. The merit on which ERB gives you a license is not on your expertise. It's your ability to prove that you can trade.
So then you'll agree that ERB, I think I saw in the report, in the quarterly report, where they were, sort of bragging, for lack of a better term, that they had issued out licenses.
No.
Beyond the issue of just issuing license, we should interrogate the quality
Absolutely.
that those licenses come with.
I can tell you, when I became president of the association, we had 36 licenses in this country. I started advocating for licenses. Up to now, we have close to 200 licenses that ERB has issued. But the point is not in the number of licenses. It's in the quality of those that get the license. Do we need to be stringent to make sure that when we give somebody a license, we've done a background check? But of course, government does not want to restrict entry into the space. All right. Where the real issue is when government is giving you a raw deal to supply through the pipeline. They need to vet. That is where the problem is. So it worries me when I hear the minister say some OMCs are not performing. I'm like, Minister, we employed you to vet. We employed you to do your due diligence. Don't come to us who gave you the job and tell us that you have failed to find somebody who can supply. It's your job. The minister has his job. He must be fired if he can't do that. He must be fired without regret. The president will not stand and go and vet the OMCs. That is not his job. The prerogative of the president is to appoint a minister. And you don't want him to interfere in the actual process. So if the minister can't perform because he doesn't understand the industry, fire him. We fired Kapala. We can fire this one too. So at the end of the day, the due diligence must be done by the ministry. I have said a number of times, Ministry of Energy needs a shake-up call. Those guys, most of them are lazy people. We have a country to run, ladies and gentlemen. Don't worry, I'm Bemba. Run and run. It sounds
the same thing.
Same, yeah. So where I come from, we have got this arrow syndrome.
Yeah.
So my point is, we can't have the Ministry of Energy sleep like this. Then at the 24th hour, you make everybody run around. Fire the minister. If he doesn't do his job, fire him. This is a ministry which, if I become president, by the way, I said I'm a political scientist. If it happened that I became president, the first ministry I'm going to bring close to my doors is a Ministry of Energy. You must, because if you can't manage that, you can't manage the economy. The matrix of growth is lying on energy space, nothing else. Don't talk about copper. You can talk about it as a supplementary support system. But you need the energy space. Every day, we breathe energy, we breathe petroleum. We want to run our minds. They run on these things. So anybody I'll bring close is that. So for me, I'm saying the intricacy of success in an economy depends on how you structure the Ministry of Energy. Given a chance, I'll fire everybody at Ministry of Energy.
Okay. The Minister of Energy right now is in trouble. But anyway, we will be taking a break right now on the People's Space podcast. And my guest is Dr. Kafula Mubanga, the president of the Oil Marketing Companies Association of Zambia. And of course, we are looking at the energy sector. Are the recent reforms that we've seen being implemented really setting up Zambia on a path of success? And are we going to achieve economic recovery through some of these reforms in the energy sector? Those are some of the questions that Dr. Mubanga is here to help us understand. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back to the People's Space podcast. Today, we are looking at all things energy, having a conversation with an industry expert, a guru in his own rights. This is Dr. Kafula Mubanga, a voice that is familiar when it comes to the petroleum sector in this country. And of course, we are looking at some of the major reforms that have characterized this important sector, whether or not they're setting up Zambia for economic recovery, as has been the agenda of government. Before we get into the conversation, I'd like to remind each and every one of you that you can win some amazing prizes by simply being interactive on our platforms under the handle the Center for Trade Policy and Development on YouTube and Facebook, as well as CTPD Zambia on TikTok and Twitter. If your comment garners enough reactions or traction, you might be that lucky winner that gets to walk away with amazing memorabilia. We are talking hoodies, mug caps, t-shirts, key holders, and all kinds of materials that are branded under the People's Space podcast. So jump on this and make sure you become one of those lucky winners. Now, Dr. Mubanga, obviously we left off on a very interesting note where you were talking about making sure that the Ministry of Energy is in its rightful place in terms of competence and deliverables. The question I have for you is the challenge we have overall in the country, and this is not limited to the energy sector, but in most of these areas, has been the issue of politics prevailing over policy, politics prevailing over competence. A lot of people always question, do we have people that can do the job, that can deliver? In your opinion, do you think the energy sector has been spared from the issue of politics prevailing over policies / competence?
Well, I can absolutely tell you that, first of all, it's been very clear. The UPND government has a political will to navigate, through our, challenges in the petroleum space specifically. Why I say so is not because I'm a UPNT cadre. No, I'm talking as an expert in the industry because I can do an analysis between the former regime and now. One of the real issues that demonstrates political will is to navigate your debt accumulation. And that was very clear from onset. UPND says we do not want it. You and me will suffer the consequences of this date. I can tell you that date, up to this day, the only thing I'm worried about is that the Ministry of Energy currently has paid out money which you call debt accumulated by the previous regime without proper audit. That date, we are coming for it. I cannot be me, my children who come and query that. Those of you who have claimed payments from the government that it wasn't right. I have an example of some OMCs that brought in petroleum product, went in, consigned to Ministry of Energy, never paid for ZRA, came back, checked where they dropped the fuel, it was not there. They claimed it was dropped at Tazama. Tazama says it was not there. The next minute, Tazama changes and says, no, they dropped the fuel because they knew now they're going to be fire. Because those were my tracks. And I realized, this is how you have accumulated this date. It's unjust. It's immoral. For some of these OMC, they have made money at the back of our ignorance. It is painful as a Zambian. I can't watch that date, and I can assure you, whosoever you are, this country will come back and audit that date. I have seen the current minister, I've told him, let's sit down. There's a problem. There's a leakage here. These monies you're paying are not correctly paid. The ministry has decided to shut me down. The truth of the matter is, if you stop, you'll be caught up one day. You will not go back to correct everything you did wrong. Time and season will catch you up. So what am I saying? I'm simply saying that there's been a political will. But to what extent? The president of the Republic of Zambia is not a minister of energy. Your job as ministry.
So why has it then been difficult just to do the forensic audit?
They have literally refused. I've written to them. The only reason I know is that if you're benefiting from a system, you will protect that system. I have not said anything. I've just simply said, these are the norms. If I have no interest, what am I protecting? I have told you, go and check this entry by ZRA. This guy did not pay his rightful amount. I've written to ZRA. I've spoken to Commissioner General, and I've told him, this entry, can you pick a query out of it? They can't. That debt which you have been servicing as a country makes me worry. Makes me worry. Because when I went deep into that, I realized it's not only one company. So, Office of the Auditor General, where are you? I know for a fact they've done a very tremendous job. When we started this journey, they've highlighted a number of pointers. But where are they? How did they not pick that era? I told the ministry, sit down. Minister of Energy, get ZRA here. Get Office of the Auditor General. Get Tazama. Speak to these numbers. Let them talk to each other. They've decided to keep quiet. And they'll come to you. Go use any media house. When are you paying the OMCs? When you're stealing. I call it stealing. I've not mentioned any institution. But I can tell you, this is wrong. That money which you're stealing is meant for my children to have medicine in the hospitals. The money you are stealing as an OMC is meant for my children to have better schools. This sector is ravaged. We need men and women that can talk. The president will not know these things until the responsible ministry raises a query. So let's not put a head of all the blames on the head of. Running a country is not an easy thing. That's why it's got ministers. My appeal is the Ministry of Health. Ministry of Energy. What have you done? Nothing. The current minister can challenge me if I've not written to him. I've asked him, let's meet in person. I'm a shareholder of this country by virtue of my birthright. I have a right to tell you, whether minister or whatever, this is what is happening. And I get concerned because the money that you're spending, if you're not benefiting from it, why didn't you audit it? If you're not benefiting, I'm not saying the minister is benefiting. I'm just simply saying, if you are not, what is the worry?
Obviously, the message is very clear, and we will be waiting to hear some of those, recommendations perhaps being adopted. Let me move your attention to another important reform that I'd like to tap your mind on, the petroleum downstream margins study. We know that the ERB also did engage a consultant earlier this year to be able to embark on that study. And the aim was to make sure that we ensure cost reflectivity, which has been, a hot subject within the energy sector, both on the electricity side of things and on the fuel side of things as well, where you fall under. And also just price stability also, So how does this petroleum downstream margins study help or benefit consumers, those that go and buy gas on the gas station? Why should they be celebrating this particular initiative and reform that the ERB we've seen roll out this year?
Well, I must admit that there has been a lot, especially with I may not say the board, but I think the management, let me say ERB as at large. They have tried to make strides. Number one, a good trait of a leader is listening. So that particular model they used, I think I was given a questionnaire. I appreciate that. I had my direct input in it. It's to arrive at what the industry trends look like. How do consumers, react, or what is their expectation? What is the best way to go? All right. So in terms of that particular approach, I think that by ERB is a very welcome approach. And it must not stop somewhere. It must continue because the dynamics of this industry keep changing. There are a lot of other things that will show up in the next 6 months. The dynamics keep changing. And the study around it is very important. It's very critical to note that the stakeholders in this space is not just the OMC, it's also the consumer.
Yeah.
So the consumer has a right of input. So they can put in something very critical for us. So what ERB did was to alert you and me that you're part of this, you're a stakeholder that we value. So put please put in your input and let's move towards that end. So I think for me, it was a fantastic move, and we support it absolutely.
Okay, let's now talk about, earlier on you raised the issue of welcoming the fact that we are increasing the number of players in the sector, which is good for us as an economy. But at the same time, we need to pay particular attention excessively on the issue of the quality of those licenses, their ability to deliver and participate competently within the fuel value chain. We've seen mushrooming, filling stations. You wake up today, the next day they are breaking the house, next to you. And before you realize, it's a filling station that somebody is erecting over there. And some have, said maybe there could be conduits of suspicious transactions happening. I don't want to categorize all filling stations in that, but this is just things that people say. So the quality of licenses vis-a-vis the mushrooming of filling stations, are we on the right trajectory with that? Are we doing enough to ensure that there's a balance?
Well, firstly is we can't avoid people input, stakeholders, like I've said. We must value what you're saying, what others are saying regards these mushrooming filling stations. That's number one. But primarily to say that it's our planning, the city planners. When you drive down into, Pretoria, you know where a gas station must be, because when you're planning your city, you must understand this is it. So some of this is because our city planners never did a good job. But that does not justify, an irregularity. If at all it is an irregularity.
I was actually looking at the act, there's that 50 meters, there's that 500 meters. And in most cases, that has not been adhered to. And things are as is. Like at the mall, there's supposed to be a certain distance where you're supposed to have a gas station.
Absolutely.
But all that is not adhered to. In residential areas, your neighbor will be a gas station. So shouldn't we be...
I like that. Well, I should think, honestly speaking, there could be some processes that we've not adhered to as a sector, and we take responsibility. And it's important that we begin to address this adequately, because the hazard that comes with these unplanned mushrooming of OMCs or filling stations is really quite disastrous. So it's very important that ERB, ZEMA put up these policies into place. But like I've said, the Ministry of Energy anchors these all regulatory bodies. And it's important that they understand what their role is as a ministry. Because we can cast a blame everywhere. But who is really supposed to take responsibility? That's our question. Ministry of Energy. Is what ERB issuing as licenses correct? Because they have got the right to suspend, by the way. They have got the right to call the board to order. The ministry has a right. So when you look at all that, then it just gives you a feel that there's something wrong at the Ministry of Energy. Do the ministers there understand their role? Do they understand the perimeters of the act? Okay, so that they can then be able to reflect what ERB is doing against that. Okay, so I think there is that gap between us. But how do we bring this to surface? It's by such kind of forums. We discuss, and we hope that those that are in decision-making processes, they understand and they can be able to take responsibility.
Earlier on, you mentioned something very interesting, that the minister had made an announcement, if I'm quoting you correctly, that every after 2 months, they'll be bidding for supply.
Yes.
What I wanted to ask then is, does that arrangement, or doesn't that arrangement create a system where the whole procurement system can be susceptible to political manipulation? When I say susceptible to political manipulation, I remember President Hakainde Hichilema, before he came on, he strongly stood and said, we will clean up the petroleum supply chain. No cadres who don't have the competence and everything will be allowed to participate in the value chain. Will only allow people that will ensure that they do a good job that does not only benefit themselves, but the country and the economy at large. So if you have a system where, for example, every 2 months you're bidding and everything, and there's just this arrangement, don't you think, again, it still leaves that window?
Well,
I'm not saying it's happening.
Yeah,
I'm not
no,
accusing anybody,
definitely.
but I'm just saying if that's a system that we have, because I agree with you
Yes.
when you say, for example, an OMC locks up a price for 6 months. I mean, that is set. It's known. You work with that. Businesses will plan around that. Everybody moves with it. But if every month, people are coming with their documents, throwing them at you, some of them will come dressed in red, and it will be very difficult for you to say no.
Wow, that's very interesting. But let me tell you something. I think, yes, it's very possible that there could be political influence. To what extent, I might not. But I can tell you that Zambians have woken up to this niche and they're doing everything possible to protect their interest. But also, there is being political will. The benefits, the trickle down benefits of what we have achieved the last 6 months to become the cheapest in the region has not been a mere rhetorics. It's purely been policy issues. It demonstrates the heart of the president in the sector, his willingness to see what can be achieved. But I can tell you, not everybody is happy. Why? Because these multinationals, they know that where they make the money is actually not in the minerals, it's in the fuel, because its turnovers are quicker. So when you hear headlines screaming, some people are not making the margins that they're supposed to make. They are not happy that you as a Zambian are going to buy fuel without date at 18 kwacha. Running a political system is not merely the presidential team and his ministers. There are external forces that control our nations. And these are people who finance your ARVs. These are people who finance this, who finance that. And they'll tell you no, because part of the proceeds they make from extorting your system is what they come back and give you as loans. So if their buffer is reducing, they'll cry loud. Politics. So even if you were a very strong leader, at some point, you have to understand that you're not in charge of a country. The words of Obama, he says to his last statement, which I read, he says, I thought I was in charge of a country until I refused an order and my children were taken out. I realized that some people are running a country. So politics is about that. So you realize that the government can only do to what it's able to do. The most important part for a government system to operate is to create systems when you gain governance that will not be fragile towards the end of the year or towards the end of your term. Because where we are going, much of these investment will be withdrawn because they have to invest it somewhere else. Because the risk environment begins to build. And no proper investor want to put in an environment where they're not sure. So there's a lot of uncertainty as we go towards elections. And you will see that eventually OMCs will begin, investments will begin to reduce. And remember, this is people's investment, not government investment. So the more we go towards uncertainty, the more likely you're going to have complex in the petroleum space.
Doc, due to the interest of time, I wish we had a lot of time to unpack this. But anyway, we will get you back on this platform as you close in under 2 minutes. We know that there has been war, between the United States of America and Iran, and there has been conversations. Experts actually have come on board and said this could have a devastating consequence on the fuel pricing. In view of the recent, relatively price stability, I would call it that, as a personal opinion
Okay.
that we've enjoyed.
Yes.
Are we likely to see this continue? And as a country, how can we insulate ourselves from external effects such as the war between Israel and Iran? With that, you can tie in your final remarks to our policymakers, and we call it a day.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So once again, it's really an honor to analyze on how government would be able to continue on this trajectory away from the external forces. First of all, it's a competence within the ministry, policy issues. Thirdly, is about how your kwacha performs. Okay, your exchange losses or exchange gains, those are very important. We are not an oil producing country. And so external factors such as the war between Israel and Iran are fundamentals. One of the issues that happens is that Iran has a gateway off the Red Sea, all right? They call them the valves, okay, where there's passage of crude oil. But obviously it has stabilized after, the US came in and, settled those orders. That's how you saw that the price came back to normal. But these shocks will not stop. The only way to go is what government is currently doing, building up reserves. Because when you increase your reserves, you're able to sit and say, we've got reserve for the next 6 months, next 5 months. Let's push in a stable price. Okay? It's not going to come very easily because you're going to be fought. Like I said, these conglomerates that make money out of systems or governments, they watch for you not to go beyond a certain limit because it pushes their business out. But government has made strides to make these reserves so that we can start piling up this. So basically, that is how you could be able to maintain the trajectory as it is. But to the policymakers, I personally have a personal conviction, not because I'm a cadre. I believe that President HH is making his best stride in this energy space. There's clear political will. Yes, there have been errors in us migrating from one system to the other. But where we are sitting, it looks good. And if we continue on this trajectory, the Zambians will celebrate. I think that's my submission.
Thank you very much for coming through. That is Dr. Kafula Mubanga, the president of the Oil Marketing Companies Association of Zambia. And we've been talking and just analyzing the petroleum sector in this country, looking at some of the reforms that we've seen government implement. How can they help the sector? Do they have the potential to actually revolutionize this sector and bring us to a place where we can begin to see economic dividends come from this sector? And those are some of the questions that Dr. Kafula was, endeavoring and laboring on. But for me, most importantly, emanating from this conversation is what Doc mentioned, the issue of establishing, without compromise, strengthening the institutional frameworks. The governance structure of the sector must have a solid policy base. Only then can everything that we've discussed as possibilities to see this sector become the true economic backbone of this country be achieved. So I think for me, that is the biggest issue that we're yet to see, the strengthening of the institutional framework, starting from the ministry itself to all the key institutions within the sector itself. The name is Wenson Mavoro. Thank you for watching the People's Space podcast. And remember, let's get interactive and stand a chance to win those fantastic and amazing prizes that I mentioned earlier on that include, hoodies, t-shirts, mug cups, and all kinds of exciting things that you can think of. We do have them in stock all just for you. So see you next time and keep watching.
I'm Dr. Kafula Mubanga, president of the Home Acting Companies Association of Zambia. I do feature on People's Space podcast, and we hope to catch you there. And obviously, as we dissect into matters that relate to petroleum space, which we feel is of importance to this country, please do catch us there. Thank you so very much.